Greetings of the day, everyone. My name is Heaven, and I welcome you all on my podcast, Unredacted Conversation. Today, we have Mr. Uwais Iqbal with us. He is founder of Simplexico. He is an AI practitioner and passionate about AI. He is passionate about designing and delivering AI, ML, and NLP solutions, which reduce manual work for legal professionals. Uwais has stellar academics, records, and an excellent professional career. So, welcome, Uwais. I'm very happy that I'm going to do podcast with you today, and I'm sure that me and my viewers have a lot better understanding about AI after this podcast.
Hi, Heaven. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure too. So, for our audience to know more about you, you are having successful career. So, can you please tell us how and what motivated you to be an entrepreneur and why you choose legal tech?
Sure. So I had been working in legal tech for about 4 or 5 years, mainly as an AI practitioner, machine learning engineer, data scientist across these different roles. And I had spent time at some startups like Eigen Technologies and Thought River, and also at a corporate innovation lab at Thomson Reuters. Legal tech, I enjoyed the problems that I was working on, and I found working with legal text and the problems that come with it very technically very challenging. But at the same time, I thought it was something worthwhile spending time working on. So it kind of was that I realized I had built up some kind of level of expertise in the legal tech space doing AI, and I had a realization that at some point the work I had been doing across different companies was effectively the same. I was building the same algorithms, I was developing the same code, I was training the same models to do similar things. And in my mind, I had an idea of whether or not there's a better way AI could be done in the legal space, that rather than everybody building out the same solutions and focusing on different use cases, is there a world where we can have the technology developed independently and then customize it and focus it on different use cases? So it was just thinking about, are there better ways for how AI can be done in the legal space? So I'm really new to entrepreneurship. It's not something kind of I've done for a long time. It's more I saw an opportunity where I thought AI is going to be something very important in the future when it comes to the legal space, and I saw the opportunity in terms of if of being able to set up as a technical practitioner or a technical kind of service provider when it comes to AI, to try and serve the needs of the legal industry when it comes to being able to leverage this technology, but doing it in a way where it's accessible, where it's open, and it's kind of not adding to the hype, but in a way where it's kind of adding meaningful kind of value to people in what they're doing in the legal space.
Yeah, exactly. And that is inspirational. And what
Thank
is
you.
your vision for Simplexico?
So it's very early. So we've only been going for 6 to 7 months now. We're a small team. In terms of the vision, I'm still figuring that out, if I'm totally honest. I think the landscape is shifting so rapidly with artificial intelligence, especially within the legal space. And in the last month, things have changed dramatically. So it's a different conversation. I think I I in terms of the vision of where I want to see the company is that I think the need for AI will grow in the legal industry. And for us, it's trying to understand how best to position ourselves so we can help facilitate that in a meaningful way, so that we're not just another vendor who drives hype and gets people to rush to adopt a new technology because it's the shiniest thing. It's more thinking about how do we kind of understand this technology in a very kind of from a very fundamental perspective, and then build it out so we can focus on legal use cases in a way that drives value and that creates kind of change in the industry. So the vision is to try and set up as a long-term AI service provider, as you were. So I think AI will become very pervasive. So it's some people give the analogy that AI will become just as pervasive as electricity, that it will be in the background of everything we do. And if you think about electricity, you have electricity suppliers, you have gas suppliers, and you have people whose responsibility it is to try and maintain and provide these resources so other people can build applications and do things on top of them. So in terms of the vision, we're looking towards moving in that direction, but I guess it's a long road because it's new territory, and it's not something which has I don't think been done before in terms of thinking about how do you set up as an AI service provider where you're able to focus on serving a particular industry and their needs so that they can use this technology in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that is great. And I'm sure that young entrepreneur would be thrilled to understand this. I
Mhm.
have gathered a lot of questions from my audience. So,
Sure.
yeah, so here it is. What is legal AI and its current position in practice? And what is future of legal AI?
Sure. So, what is legal AI? I think that's a really good question, but I think we have to take one step back and ask what is AI. And it's important we get the right definition in mind because that will affect how we understand legal AI and then the further applications. So, one definition we like to work with is that AI is a way is a technique where we want to try and use machines to replicate something human beings can do. So, for example, there's a particular task that a human being is able to do, but now with the advent of new technology, we can use artificial intelligence as a way of teaching a machine a particular task so that we don't have to rely on a human to do that work. We can now, for example, use a machine. So when you think about AI from this perspective, it's a way of capturing and scaling expertise. And I think this is quite important just from like how we think about AI. So now we have this understanding that AI is a way of capturing and scaling expertise. Typically in the legal industry, the bottleneck for a lot of the work that has to happen is the human being. And because they have the specialized knowledge, the advanced understanding, and they can understand the law and the precedents and all of these technical things, you need a human being to be able to do the work of the law or the work in legal, for example. So now with artificial intelligence and with like the new advancements that we've had in generative AI, what's interesting is now we can give some of that work to machines so that human beings aren't the bottleneck. And when we're using machines, we can have as much scale as we need because if we want to replicate another instance of an AI model, we can do that very easily. It's not something difficult. Whereas if we wanted to replicate the skill of another human being, it would take a number of years to train someone up who's a junior, who's associate, to get to that level where he's that level of expertise as someone existing. So I think if we look at AI from this perspective, it becomes very interesting. And then when we speak about legal AI, that's where we want to think about how AI can be applied in the legal industry. And then this can range from anywhere, thinking about how AI can be applied in the court systems and in the justice systems, through to how AI can be used in law firms, through to how AI can be used in corporate legal teams, and even through to how AI can be used with legal aid clinics, etc., with the whole access to justice piece. So I think there's like a broad spectrum of where AI can be used in the legal industry, but it's just understanding from like the ground up what AI is and some of the ways it can be used.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm sure that there are many people who knows what AI is and that AI is going to do wonders. But what wonders it will do, we have no idea about. So after
Mhm.
hearing it from you, so I'm sure that my audience will have better perspective about AI. So now you told us about AI. So it brings up the potential of AI. What are potential applications in legal field? If we are going to use AI, what are the potential applications you think that we might be going to see in near future?
Sure. So any time, so if we think about um, legal practice, for example, so if we think about legal more generally, we can break or a law firm or kind of a legal department, we can break down like three main areas where we think there will be lots of different applications for AI. So within like a law firm or a corporate environment, there's like the business of law, where you have to worry about HR, marketing, sales, business development, all of those things. So I think we're already seeing AI being applied to that when it comes to general businesses, but I think the same type of AI can also be used in a corporate setting for legal. For example, we're seeing generative AI solutions that can help write marketing copy, for example, or machine learning models that can help screen candidates during a recruiting and interview process. So I think those things will happen in the business of law. But then there's also the side of like legal operations and the management of legal professionals. And then that's where you think about resource management, spend management, and understanding how you can forecast how you can forecast or predict costs and resources for a new piece of work, a new matter that might come in based on historical trends that the company has worked on. So there's this like predictive aspect to where AI can be used. But I think what's happened now with like the recent trend of generative AI is that it's unlocked lots of applications in the practice of law. And then this is kind of the day-to-day work legal professionals have to do. For example, drafting a motion, carrying out a particular piece of legal research, drafting a contract, making redlining a contract, negotiating with parties, etc. So now, previously AI was kind of limited to a few different aspects, but now it's possible to use AI in the practice of law itself. And then I think that's where we'll have like the most substantial improvement in being able to like replicate human skill and capture it through using some of these AI systems. So I think that's from like a broader perspective. But we've tried to break down like some of the application areas by focusing on the particular actions we can try and replicate using AI. And then this is where it gets interesting, because we can try and boil this down into, I think we've managed to boil it down into 7 different actions that AI can actually help with when it comes to the legal side. So AI can do things like extract information from passages of text. So often lawyers have to do this task where they have to read through like lots of contracts as part of a due diligence exercise to try and extract different pieces of information. So that's one thing you can use AI to do. You can use AI to like label information. So think about like knowledge management and those types of use cases where you have a predefined taxonomy and you want to label some sort of information. So you can use AI to label information. You can use AI to compare different passages of text and detect any differences. So for example, if you're redlining a contract, you can use an AI model to try and see if there's any differences between them. And then there's, in the e-discovery space, AI is really being used when it comes to trying to organize large informations of documents to try and find similar clusters. Then there's like the search use cases around how to use AI to find what you need from a large collection of documents, whether that's contracts, whether that's cases, doing legal research, etc. And then the kind of more recent ones is around how AI can be used to draft information, whether that's drafting an email or a contract and then summarizing information. So how do you go from long form, use AI to go from long form content into a shorter summary? So might be, for example, if a judge has written a case which is 100 pages, can you use AI to create like a 5-sentence summary so that you can save like 2 days of reading when it comes to it? So I think if we're able to like move away from speaking about AI in a very general and broad way to speaking about it in terms of these like very particular and focused actions, then I think that the conversations become much more meaningful, because you're not speaking about like a general thing, you're speaking about a more specific thing. And then as soon as you start speaking about these generic actions, you can immediately see as a legal professional, someone who's close to what lawyers do, you can start to see where AI could potentially be used wherever these actions are happening and lawyers are having to do these actions manually. We can try and use AI in those different places.
Amazing. I can feel the future already. So talking about future, there was a lot buzz about Web3 tech, like AI, blockchain, and few other technologies. So how is AI, specifically legal AI, different? What is differentiating factors here?
That's a good question. So I don't know too much about Web3 and blockchain, but I think what the differentiating factor in the conversation now versus before, because there's always been this conversation around AI in the legal space, but I think more recently it's gained more traction. But I think now the big kind of step change in the technology is that is like this drafting and text generation piece. Like we've been able to do text generation with AI for about like 6 or 7 years. It's not something new. But what's happened now is that level of performance, of that level of quality from the machine has become so good, it's almost indistinguishable from a human's ability to draft information. And I think that's what's helped people to see and understand where this can be used. That if an AI machine can do this job just as well as a human being, if not more kind of in a more structured way, in a more repeatable, reliable way, then it's a way you can try and scale that expertise. So now that differentiation between what a human can do and what a machine can do when it comes to particular actions like drafting and summarizing, that gap has become so indistinguishable that now we want to try and think about how we can be more efficient when using machines rather than having to rely on humans.
Yeah, oh great. That is quite a thing. And I'm really wishing to become true. Since it is that powerful, it must have some impact. So, what impact is going to have on legal AI or legal professionals? So, who has access to justice, etc.?
It's I think it's a very hard question, because the ground is still moving in the AI space. That even within the past 3 to 6 months, there's been so many advancements in AI that the next 3 to 6 months will be very different. And then that's just like in the AI world. And then there's a conversation about how that filters down and translates into applications in the legal space. So I think there would definitely be impact in the legal space. But I think the most interesting thing is that that being able to scale human expertise, that if we're like typically what's been the blocker or the bottleneck in the legal profession has been the human being, that there's only a certain number of human beings, or there's only a certain number of judges, or there's only a certain number of legal experts who can actually do this very high quality work, which they've trained their whole lives to do, for example, and it's very kind of specialized, which means it's very expensive to get access to them. It's very expensive to get the time so they can work on something like that. But then if you're able to take their expertise, capture it using AI, and then scale it out in kind of using machines in a way where you no longer have this bottleneck, then there's no longer this like constraint. So I think that's where it will be interesting to see how like AI changes like the business of how law is done, and then also when it comes to the access to justice piece, it removes these barriers, because then for kind of very common use for very common kind of issues when it comes to like things like family law or employment law, etc., which are kind of common things which come up in the legal system, then you're not limited by the number of attorneys available or the number of associates available. You can encode that within an AI system and try and scale that so that it's easier for people to access, and it won't with that scale, then hopefully the prices will drop, and then it will be easier for people to access justice. But I guess it'll be interesting to see how things unfold, and these are just some ideas of what might happen in the future.
All right. So I think it is going to change the dynamic and current scenario of legal and how to deal legal data,
Yeah.
and which is going to be certainly improve the efficiency. So I
Mhm.
was studying a little bit about AI to understand better about the kind of questions which I received from the audience. So I came across which is something which is called bias. For example, if I'm training someone, if I have a pet, a dog, so I trained the dog with the instruction that if you see a stranger, bark or bite.
Mhm.
So one day, one of my relative, visit my house after 20 years, and now my dog isn't able to differentiate the if person on my doorstep is stranger or any relatives.
Yeah.
So he's definitely going to bark or bite. So is it going to be any different with AI? I would like to understand if we have such biases are present with AI, and if yes, then how we are going to address these biases.
So this is a really important question, and I think it's not discussed enough, that how do you kind of deal with the biases in AI models? So the biases come about because of what these models have been trained on. So there's a process behind how these models are created. So there's a data set from which the model learns, and then that's how it understands. Sorry, that's how it understands certain things, and that's how it's able to do certain tasks like generate information or extract information. And the model itself, or what the AI system does, is just a reflection of what it has within its data. So, for example, some of the GPT-3 and the BERT model released by Google, they had problems where whenever the BERT model was given information about something to do with the nursing profession, it automatically assumed a female gender. So it was like from its inception, it was sexist, right? Because in its data, it had learned this association that in the nursing profession, there's only females. So whenever you're speaking about the nursing profession, only use the female gender or only use the female pronouns. So this bias which comes up is a reflection of what these models have been trained on. And this is important because as more of these models go into production and they interact with us and we interact with them, they'll have impacts on how decisions are made and how and if it impact people's lives. So a few years back, there was an article where Apple had created an AI model that they wanted to use to assess credit card loan applications. And they had this model in production, and it was something that the decisions about who was accepted or rejected in their credit card application was decided by this machine learning or this AI model. And this model had learned from the data to reject the applications of female applicants because they had poor credit scores in the data set. So automatically it learned to just reject female applicants when it comes to credit cards. So that was bias in the model itself, but it had real world consequences where females who are in need of credit or in need of finance for their personal lives, for example, they applied and they were rejected because of the bias in the model within the data set. So when you think about it from that perspective, that as these models get into production and they're used more widely, the bias they have will potentially affect people's lives, which is quite dangerous. So the question comes that how do we mitigate bias and how do we try and resolve some of these problems? I think it's important to develop an understanding of the process of how an AI model is created. And then if you have an understanding of that process, you can see the biases before they have negative impacts or negative consequences on people's lives. So for example, in this case, like with the Apple credit card, if they had done the right checks and balances, looking at the data, making sure it was fair and trusted before training a machine learning model. And then even when the machine learning model is in production, having the right mechanisms of oversight and governance of what the model is actually doing, so that you can stop it before it has negative consequences of someone's lives. So there's the underlying technology, which is amazing and great, but there's this broader question of how do we use the technology in a way where it's fair, it's trusted, and it's done in an ethical way, so it's not having a negative impact in people's lives. And that question of bias comes up, and it's very dangerous because of scale. Because previously, when you have bias in human beings, you're limited by like the decision of an individual human being who might be biased. But then if you have an AI system which is making these decisions at scale for thousands of people or millions of people, and it's biased, then that bias is also scaled. So it's I think it's a broader question of thinking about how to do AI in a fair way.
Yeah, I think that it will be a pretty safe if we will use or apply little knowledge, and then we would good to go. So on that note, I would like to understand how do you see the intersection of legal AI and ethical consideration, such as privacy and data protection?
Yeah, it's a very important question with the recent things that have been happening with ChatGPT and generative AI. So in Italy, one of the regulators, they blocked ChatGPT around privacy concerns, but then I think recently they've changed their decision. And then I think the EU recently have come out with some guidelines about how generative AI solutions have to be transparent in a particular way so you can understand how they're working. So I think there's important ethical considerations when it comes to the application of AI in the legal industry. And this is because the end benefit or the end consumer of who might be impacted. So for example, if take for example a law firm who has like AI models in production and when they're giving advice, they're using AI models. If those AI models aren't managed and implemented in an ethical way, then that could have impact. That could have serious impact on the legal advice that's given to someone, and also how they take that legal advice and how they operate in with that advice. And then even within the court systems, for example. So if there are AI systems in the court system, and they haven't been implemented with like ethical considerations, and they have bias, and they don't have this aspect of fairness within them, then that could have significant consequences where some people could try and manipulate these AI algorithms to achieve a certain outcome against another party, and then it becomes very problematic. So I think there's lots of open questions about how these AI models can be used in an ethical way, but the conversation has to be one where it's very grounded in an understanding of how the technology actually works and what goes into creating these AI models. Most of the discussions around ethics and fairness are quite distant from the actual people who build these models. There's almost like two different worlds where like there's the world of AI practitioners who like actually build these models and train on data. And then there's this kind of separate world of AI ethicists and governance people who try and understand these more kind of serious questions about the implication of AI on society. And any kind of meaningful conversation has to happen across the two, because you can't have one without the other. So I think it's important that within the legal industry that we get very good at understanding the process of creating AI, because you're not able to control or have oversight or have any of these or have an impact on the ethical considerations unless you have like control over the process. And then I think this is why it's important for the legal industry not to rely on third-party vendors or third parties for AI and in just consuming it, because when you're just consuming, you can't there's not much you can do in terms of dealing with bias, controlling the process, etc. But if you have the process available and you've mastered the process and you're able to control everything in the process, then you can have control over certain outcomes, certain quality, and certain checks and balances in how those models are created.
Yeah. So I can sense that this intersection will bring many opportunities, as what I gathered, that AI is still in progress of being developed every day, every minute, and it is going to be better and better. So with that, this betterment, what are the challenges and limitations that you see with legal AI?
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges is a lack of understanding and education around AI. It's unfortunate, but lots of people have based their understanding of the technology from buzzwords, from headlines of AI replacing lawyers and robots taking over, and all of these types of things. So just like, for example, if you speak to anyone, they have an understanding of the internet, like they know what a homepage is, they know what a URL is, they know what bookmarks are, they know how to use an internet browser. So they have like some level of understanding of using the technology. And then this is a basic understanding that everyone has, like everyone knows how to use a search engine, for example. But you don't necessarily need to know what happens behind the scenes. Like you don't necessarily need to know like how the internet works with all of the packets being sent across different routers to reach the final destination and get your information. Or you don't need to know about how like the algorithms of how a search engine works, but you need to know how to think about it, how to speak about it, and also how to operate with it. And with AI in the legal space, I don't think we're even at that stage of where we're able to speak about it in a meaningful way. When you speak to most people, they don't have an understanding of the technology. They've just understood AI in legal, and then it's in these very, very broad and vague terms. So I think there will be lots of change when it comes to AI, and it's something which won't just happen in the legal industry, but it will happen in all industries, and it will something which will unfold over time. So I think it's important to spend some time learning about AI, understanding some of the language and the terminology, and at least kind of playing with some of these tools so you can understand how they work. So I think one of the biggest barriers will be education and helping people step over the hype so they can understand the technology. But I think another barrier will be the kind of the scarcity of AI people or AI practitioners. And then this is something we're seeing that already within the world of AI and machine learning, there's a lack of there's a high demand for these people who can actually build and train and develop AI systems. And then if you think about the legal industry, um, the legal industry isn't as appealing as the big technology companies. So these people with these skills, they'll naturally go to those types of companies. So then there's a question of how does the legal industry attract those types of skills and those types of people to work on these questions and these problems in a way where it can kind of be meaningful and bring that value and transformation for the industry. So I think there's some things to think about there about the education as also like the scarcity of talent. But I think one of the big challenges is, and this is something we're facing, is getting people to think about AI outside of the big vendors. So like you have Facebook, you have OpenAI, etc. They're able to create these AI applications, but sometimes people have limited their thinking to say that these are the only ways you can get AI, which isn't true. So it's just being able to see that these are instances of AI applications, but if you're able to understand the process and understand how AI works, you can create your own AI systems. And I think with a lot of the challenges around ethics, data privacy, security, etc., in order to get a grip on those and be able to solve those problems, you have to have control of the AI process. So it's I think it's important for us in the legal industry to try and develop those skills and develop that understanding and develop that expertise.
Yeah, I'm sure that we are going to work a lot to mitigate those challenges and have the better legal AI. So to understand the challenges and like have a better legal AI to understand challenges and improve. So we definitely are going to make best out of AI.
Mhm.
After understanding challenges of AI, can you please tell us how you see the human lawyers evolving to in conjunction with the integrated of legal AI?
Sure. So there's lots of people who say AI will replace lawyers. I don't think that's true. I think what will happen is that the type of work legal professionals have to do will be different. That legal professionals, they still have jobs. They'll still be there, and AI will just be playing a role in a more kind of assistive capacity, or in a more capacity of helping humans achieve their objectives in a better way. So I think what at least what we're trying to kind of push towards is an understanding where AI is not going to compete with you. Like there's no value in that in the longer term for the legal industry. That if we replace everybody with robots, that's not beneficial for anyone in the longer term. But if you have a perspective where AI is to work the way we want AI to be is to work in collaboration with legal professionals, then it takes a different perspective, because with these systems they're impressive, but they don't have any understanding of truth. They don't have any understanding of reality. They don't have any grounding in like the actual law itself. They're just able to do things based on the data they've seen. So you're always going to need a human, for example, to check output. You're always going to need a human to make sure things are accurate and factually correct. So I think that the types of things lawyers will have to do will change. So rather than lawyers having to do like manual, repetitive grunt tasks like highlighting or extracting information from documents, or reading like thousands of pages of case law just to find a particular precedent, I think the type of work will shift to more high value creative work. And then the more kind of repetitive, low value work will be like given to machines, so you can focus on higher value things. So I think there will be this collaboration between machines and legal professionals.
I'm pretty hopeful there. So there is something I heard in recent webinar,
Mm-hmm.
AI lawyer. So it was like when I was young and heard about flying cars. So I want to understand if there is a possibility, as you already discussed about AI lawyers, and if yes, there is a possibility, and if yes, so will a lawyer who is based on AI is going to be any better than the lawyers which have human touch and other aspect? So how do you see current development in legal AI and its application in the legal field? So as you said that AI lawyers will not totally replace the human
Mm.
lawyer. So, if there is something you want to discuss about AI lawyers in future.
So, by AI lawyer, do you mean like just like an AI system which could do everything a lawyer can do?
Yes, how do
So
you see current development like in legal AI and its application in legal fields? So, can we
Mhm.
see AI lawyers in future
Yeah,
for same?
I think we won't see AI lawyers, but I think we'll see AI tools to help lawyers. I don't think we're at that stage with these systems where they can do everything a lawyer can do. They can give the impression they can do a lot by piecing together these different actions and these different skills like drafting and summarizing. But with the difficulty is that with a lawyer you have to have some level of understanding of legal logic and legal reasoning, and I think that's where the humans still have the advantage, that these machines aren't able to do that, aren't able to reach that level of logic and reasoning, where you can trust them to kind of have the right understanding of how precedent works and how the conclusion might draw from it, or how a particular argument might work and the particular analysis of it. So these machines are good at particular things, and they're on particular things, they're just as good as a human being. For example, just like summarizing text or drafting information. But then for these tasks which are more human and which require like a higher level of intelligence, for example, like understanding case law and doing an analysis of it, or being able to reason through a legal judgment and check legal reasoning, I think humans will still be needed there. And I don't think with how like these AI models are evolving, I think it will be a long time before we get to a point where these models can actually do like logical reasoning in a very reliable way. So I think there will always be this gap where these models can like replicate certain behaviors, but then when it comes to like logic and reasoning and understanding, a human being will always be needed. So I don't think we'll have like a fully fledged AI lawyer. I think we'll have like AI which can help on particular tasks, but you'll still need a human being to do like the human stuff of evaluation, of reasoning, of understanding.
Oh, I see. So definitely there would be some challenges, biases, I think. So
Mhm.
I was just going through your Twitter handle and I found Brad there. So you posted a meme that it goes like this: "Do not be like Brad." I can completely relate to, and it was like that. This is a Brad, and he got carried away with the ChatGPT hype and shared the sensitive data with OpenAI because
Yeah.
people are sharing lot of information with OpenAI. People these days are asking anything or everything, and knowingly or unknowingly. So they are sharing very sensitive data to OpenAI. How to make most out of ChatGPT and such tech, and if you want to share what precautions should be there.
Sure. So yeah, I think it's a it's an interesting one. So the ChatGPT is really good as a general purpose tool, that it can do these things really well. But then there's, because it's a third party tool, there are these challenges about data protection, data privacy, and security. What you're sharing with a third party, whether you're allowed to share particular information, and the confidentiality that comes with it. I think what's happening in the open source community is really interesting, in that they're starting to replicate a lot of the functionality that ChatGPT and these closed models can do, but by creating the models in an open source way so that people can use them in commercial applications, but the code and the models and the data are open source. So I think what's really interesting is that if you want to replicate what ChatGPT can do, you can replicate it in a way where you don't have to send data out to a third party by using open source tools and frameworks, etc. But in order to do that, you need to have like some technical understanding of how these models work and be some have level of, you have to be an AI practitioner to leverage that and bring that in house. So I think there are ways that we can still use the best in class AI systems without having to rely on a third party, by taking what's available in the open source community. But in order to do that, you need that technical ability of understanding and being able to build these AI systems. So that when you're able to do that, and I think that's where the question comes in terms of what's the best way to do AI in the legal space. then if you're able to do that in a way where it's internal within an organization and no data ever leaves an organization, then you can still leverage AI in that way. So I think there are ways you can use AI, but it requires more understanding and more control over the process rather than just saying we just want to use ChatGPT because it's easy to use. So I think there are other ways around it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anything you would like to advise to me or my audience?
Sure. I would say to get as educated as possible when it comes to AI, and to think about it in a way where it's not vague, but you're very specific when you're speaking about AI. And I think if you're able to do that, then the conversations and the discussions become much more meaningful, because you're not speaking about a vague technology, you're speaking about a particular a task, a particular application, etc. So with electricity, we don't speak about electricity. Like people don't say we're using electricity. They speak about like the appliances they use. They say, oh, we use a microwave, we have a toaster oven, we have a cooker, etc. We have a TV. So in the same way, we have to like move away from speaking about AI in a broad sense, in the general technology, and speak about these particular applications. And then when you do that, you're able to see, oh, you don't actually need a microwave for what you want to do. You need a toaster. It still runs on electricity, but it's a different type of application. So it's that level of understanding. If you're able to get to that space and have these more informed conversations and discussions, then you can start to begin to see how AI can be used in these different ways. So I think like developing an education and having more literacy around AI is important, but then also engaging with the conversation at the same time. That in the legal industry, this will be quite a significant change, and it will be quite kind of new to adopt this technology. And that conversation has to be informed by people in the legal industry as well as legal professionals who understand the domain. And it's whenever and when you're able to bring the domain conversation with the technology conversation, I think that's where you get these like really valuable ideas of how AI can be done, because it's not like previously where if you're an expert in one space, then that's it. Now, because things have become so disparate, you need to have these experts from different places coming together and contributing. So I think it's important to like engage in the conversations, speak to people who aren't necessarily in your space, speak to AI people, speak to data scientists, speak to people in the AI governance space, and get a broader understanding and a broader picture of the conversation.
Yeah. So, thanks a lot, Uwais, for your kind advice here. I cannot thank you enough. So, I have asked so many questions, and thank you so much for answering those questions patiently. I'm sure that we are going to have such more podcasts in future. It was really very enlightening and knowledgeable session, and I'm sure my audience would have a lot better understanding on AI after this podcast. So, thank you so much, always, for your time and being patient again with my curiosity on AI. And it was pleasure to have you here. So, I really wish you to have great success. And I'm expecting yum dishes soon from Simplexico.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Have a nice day, everyone. Keep sharing your love and support. And also, I assure that we will keep bringing more and more amazing podcasts.